Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes now to put some questions. I'm just going to kick off. Ben, how long will it be before Transport for the South East actually gets its statutory status, do you think?
Well, as I said, I mean, this is for Transport for the South East to come forward with a proposal for the Secretary of State to consider. So I know that the subnational transport body has already been working quite hard to sort of get itself off the ground. Amazing progress in the last, under 1 year. And I think, if TFSE pulls together and starts to get together that proposal for the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State will consider that as quickly as possible. There are, I would say, this does require legislation, and as many of you are probably aware, it is challenging to get legislation through Parliament at the moment, and will be for the next few years, given the amount of legislation related to leaving the European Union that has to be done. But this is sort of set out in the legislation. It's in TFSE's hands to come forward with the proposal, and we'll then sort of take it forward from there. Well,
Rupert, what are your ambitions? I mean, and does it matter that this is accelerated to a statutory body?
Well, I suppose you can't let parliamentary time get in the way of a good thing. We are committed to driving our position through to statutory status, and in a post-Brexit world, whatever the outcome, the South East is fundamental for those goods, services, and trade. And we think it's in the interests of the national economy, and that's why we're working through to apply for statutory status.
But Martin, meanwhile, you're trying to get your own economic heartland body to get statutory status as well. Is this a competitive thing? I mean, or how do you work together to make sure that you get, I suppose, double the benefit?
So as I mentioned, you've got the 4 STBs already working together. The reason we work together is because there are opportunities to share knowledge and experience. Ourselves in England's Economic Heartland, Transport for the South East and Midlands Connect, we're all committed to seeking statutory status as soon as possible, because we can see the added value. The partners who are members of those partnerships can see the added value. They want their voice heard within government. And I think what we can see is the opportunity to draw on the experience with Transport for the North have had. We're not looking to necessarily be the same model as TfN, but we need to understand and draw on their experience from the process that they've gone through. And I would hope that, having been through the process once, we can make the second step for ourselves, Transport for the South East and Midlands Connect, a simpler one that can go through faster. And wouldn't it be great if actually we just tried to realise some economies of scale and say you've got 3 bodies here who are working together, have an understanding of what they're trying to do. If you're worried about time in Parliament, you've got 3 bodies that could perhaps go together relatively quickly at the same time. And I'm entirely in the same camp as Rupert. This is a bit of a no-brainer for UK as an economy. Do we want to realise the economic opportunities? Yes. If so, you need to get these bodies in place as quickly as possible.
I mean, one of the things that Transport for the North had was a George Osborne senior government figure that really drove it. Is that what's missing in South East?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't think so. I mean, as Martin said, you don't need to have every subnational transport body following the same format. The legislation is not designed to do that, to produce sort of identical bodies in different regions of the country. Individual regions need to come together and design a subnational transport body that works for them and delivers their own priorities. And as the Secretary of State said, huge progress on the part of TFSE and indeed England's economic heartlands over the last 12 months plus. And the Secretary of State is committed to considering proposals that are coming forward from subnational transport bodies, whether or not they have statutory status. So I don't think it needs a particular sort of figurehead. I think it's the objectives and the way in which local and regional partners come together which dictates how effective they can be. Okay.
But Rupert, the reality is that in this particular part of the world, you've got transport schemes such as Heathrow, Crossrail 2, they are nationally important, so they are necessarily quite high up the national agenda, requiring, I suppose, a big drive nationally as well as locally.
I mean, there's always a question about affordability, so there's a limit to how much you can do at any given time. But the opportunity, 500 billion contribution to the economy, is not something to be sniffed at. And the rest of the UK economy needs the South East. Shipping services, trade, goods, it cannot function effectively. I mean, I would argue that London needs us more than we need them in terms of that connectivity, that ability to move goods and services around. The South East is fundamental, and there's the strength of relationship between the politicians in all the constituent bodies and the LEPs to drive this through.
Are there some other questions from the floor? Make yourself known to me, and I'll get a microphone to you, by the way. We've got a couple more minutes before we break for the next session. So if there are, just make yourself aware, and I'll get a microphone to you. Any questions? Put your hands up now if you've got them. Otherwise, I'll just... OK, can we get a mic down the front here? Meanwhile, though, I suppose I'm interested to know why, Martin, you mentioned that there are, this is the next incarnation of a regional body. Why will Transport for the South East be different? How will it be able to accelerate in a way that other transport bodies haven't done, or other regional bodies haven't done?
So I think the reason why I'm always confident that we can get the strategic working to work, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the partnerships. It comes down to people having a common objective, a common goal, and choosing to do that work together. And I think that's, for me, why this incarnation is perhaps gives me more optimism than perhaps some of the stuff we've done in the past. This is about the local partners choosing to come together, recognizing that there are opportunities, there are challenges that they want to work together on, and they will stay focused, as Rupert was saying, staying focused on the really big things so that you have the framework, if you like, that then allows the local partnerships, the local authorities at a local level to deal with the issues within that framework. So if I think about some of the geographies that are coming through, the geographies reflect the economic geography of an area. They're not an artificial construct, which is what we've had in the past. And we also face common issues. Rupert's talked about the relationship with London. An awful lot of our transport problems still stem from the fact that we are fundamentally, it's a radial network. All roads and all tracks seem to focus on heading into London. And if you think about the relationship that yourselves in Transport for the South East and England's economic heartland have, it's actually about creating the orbital links that provide an alternative to London. And as Rupert said, I'm in exactly the same camp. We are needed by London as much as London needs, London needs us as much as we need London. If I think about my own part of the world, we've got East-West Rail being pioneered and partnered by the Secretary of State as a personal key project. But what's the benefit of that? It actually unlocks opportunities within London. So we need to work together on this, and we need to recognise investment in our areas actually helps support the economy of London in the longer term.
Questions down here, far away.
Thank you.
Say who you are first.
Terry O'Neill, Temple Group. Martin, just to pick up on that point, question for you, please, Rupert, and by extension, Ben. That interface with London, I would suggest, is quite a key one. If Transport for the South East is hoping to seek statutory powers, how is that going to work with the likes of TfL and the London boroughs? Is there some form of wider umbrella organisation that's needed? Is there some form of interface agreement that's going to be needed? Because I can imagine, with all due respect, where Transport for the South East sits and is hoping to sit, great opportunities, but inevitably, as you say, Martin, a lot of it will start and end in London. So how's that going to work? Thank you.
Rupert.
So we've already started the relationship with Transport for London and the Mayor's office. We contributed to the consultation on the Mayor's transport strategy. And, as the London plan develops, that's going to be important for us. Of course, things like Crossrail are beneficial to us. And I think, there is some real challenges in the way that Martin described for us to pick up. We know that at the peak times, rail routes they're in exceeding capacity. So that work with prospective franchise holders is going to be really important in terms of setting standards for rail. We know there are challenging pinch points on routes into London. We know the M25 Southwest Quadrant is at capacity and a real challenge going forward. Heathrow expansion presents some difficulties around surface transport. And although Heathrow is just outside of our geography, it's nonetheless an important component. Growth in Gatwick and Southampton is also moving apace. So that relationship with London is crucially important. And although I flippantly say they need us more than we need them, there is a mutual relationship And that needs to be nurtured as we go through, particularly over the next 12 months.
But Ben, it's not just about London.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, I do totally agree with what Rupert said. It will be important to make sure that interface with London, with Transport for London, works effectively. Because as Martin was saying, so many kind of transport corridors in the southeast are focused towards London. So I mean, I think there's a prize to be had there in terms of some cooperation and working together to secure the best outcomes. But let's not forget that Transport for the southeast is focused on delivering those really significant economic benefits, which are potentially all to play for, that Rupert was outlining before, and they are benefits to the southeast as a region, distinct region in its own right. So if you take Heathrow, for example, which is sort of just on the edge into the TfL area, historically links out of Heathrow to the west and to the south haven't been as good as they might be, and I think that's an example of where there's an opportunity here for Transport for the southeast to say, yes, connectivity is important for London for a whole range of reasons, but actually there are some benefits here that could start to flow even more to the sort of southeast region. So it's kind of standing up for the region's own rights, as well as, I think, working closely with London where it makes sense to do so.
Thanks, Roy. Quick question here. Say who you are and far away.
Okay. My question is born out of what appears to be an operation in silos, with road operating separately to rail and so on and so forth. So I ask this question: would you tell us how you will deliver integrated, and I mean road, rail, bus, interchange hubs, ports, cycling, mobility user, transport solutions for various areas within the region? So I'm not just talking about some overall statement looks nice. Okay. I'm looking for real solutions that are integrated between those forms of transport.
Rupert, and so you're from where?
I'm a councillor with Lewes District Council. I'm speaking on my own behalf.
Okay. Just Rupert.
I think it's a really, really important point. Integrated transport is fundamental and will be fundamental in development of our transport strategy. Transport for the North, for example, are working up smart ticketing schemes. We want to learn from them how they pull off a smart ticketing infrastructure that gives you the connectivity between rail and bus and so on and so forth. I think the challenges that lie ahead, 2040, no new petrol or diesels. What does that mean in terms of how people get about? The way in which people travel, certainly during peak hours, has changed. So, no longer are you getting that 1 or 2 hour peak, you're getting a spread during the day. And what is crucial, I think, is how people have responded to things, certainly in my own area, to Southern Rail strikes, to congestion. People are starting to travel in different ways. And the transport strategy needs to be able to identify that true integration. Now, roads and rail are only part of the story, very important part of the story, but as is the ability for people to connect to bus and the ability, certainly through local highways authorities, for cycling and walking when you get to your sort of last mile, if you like.
Okay. Thanks very much. We're going to have to call it to a close here because I've got a programme to stick to. So thank you very much to our panel. Thanks to Ben, to Martin and to Rupert.